The night I found the hidden camera inside my granddaughter's teddy bear was the night I understood exactly what kind of monster I had married. The camera was small, almost invisible, tucked behind the stitching near the bear's left eye. It was recording everything, every conversation, every phone call, every moment I spent alone with Lily. And the worst part was this: the man who put it there was sleeping right down the hall, the man I had trusted with my life, the man who had promised to save us. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the bear. The house was dark. The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway and the soft breathing of my 7-year-old granddaughter asleep in the next room. I set the bear down carefully, exactly where it had been. I could not let him know I had found it, because if Richard Ashford knew I had discovered his secret, everything he had built around us, the walls, the smiles, the promises, it would all collapse, and Lily and I would be buried underneath. Let me take you back to the beginning. My name is Helen Dawson. I am 63 years old. I have hands that smell like cinnamon and flour, a voice that cracks when I sing hymns, and a heart that has been shattered so many times I have lost count. I live, or I used to live, in a small town called Cedar Falls in eastern Tennessee. The kind of town where everybody knows your name and your business and your grandmother's recipe for peach cobbler. I raised my daughter, Sarah, all by myself. Her father left when she was 2, just packed a bag one Tuesday morning and never came back. No note, no phone call, nothing. I worked double shifts at the diner on Main Street to keep us fed. Sarah grew up strong and beautiful and stubborn. She became a nurse. She married a good man named Kevin. They gave me the greatest gift of my life, a granddaughter named Lily. Lily was born with the sun in her smile, bright blonde hair, big green eyes. She laughed at everything. She was perfect. Then the accident happened. Sarah and Kevin were driving home from a weekend trip to Nashville. A truck ran a red light on Highway 40. Kevin died instantly. Sarah held on for 3 days in the ICU before she slipped away. She was 34 years old. I remember standing in the hospital hallway holding a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. A nurse touched my shoulder and said those words that break the world in half. I am so sorry. Lily was 5 at the time. She did not understand why her mama and daddy were not coming home. She kept asking me every night, "Grandma, when is Mummy coming back?" And every night I held her and said, "Soon, baby, soon," because I did not know how to tell a 5-year-old that soon means never. I became Lily's legal guardian. Social services said I needed to prove I could provide a stable home. The problem was my home was falling apart. The roof leaked. The furnace barely worked. I owed 3 months of rent. My savings had gone to Sarah's hospital bills and the funeral. Then Lily got sick. It started with headaches, then dizziness. Then one afternoon she collapsed at school. The doctors ran tests. They found a tumor pressing against her brainstem. Benign, they said, but growing. She needed surgery. Specialized surgery at a hospital in Atlanta. The cost was beyond anything I could imagine. Insurance covered part of it, but the rest, the travel, the aftercare, the months of recovery, it was like staring at a mountain and being told to climb it with no legs. I tried everything. I started a fundraiser at the church. I sold my car. I took a 3rd job cleaning offices at night. It was not enough. It was never enough. That was when I met Richard Ashford. He walked into the diner on a Wednesday afternoon in November. Tall, silver hair combed back neatly, expensive coat, polished shoes. He looked like he had stepped out of a magazine. Cedar Falls did not get many men like that. He ordered coffee and apple pie and sat by the window reading a newspaper like he had all the time in the world. I served him. He looked at me and smiled warmly. "Best pie I have had in years," he said. I thanked him and moved on. But he came back the next day. And the next, by the end of the week, we were talking. He told me he was a retired businessman from Charlotte, North Carolina. He had sold his company, a chain of senior living facilities, for a fortune. He was traveling the country looking for a quiet place to settle down. His wife had passed away 2 years ago. He said he was lonely. I told him about Lily, about the surgery, about the money. I do not know why I told a stranger all that. Maybe because he listened, really listened, not the way people listen when they are waiting for their turn to talk. He listened like every word mattered. A week later, Richard made me an offer that stopped my heart. "Marry me, Helen. Let me take care of you and your granddaughter." I thought he was out of his mind. I told him so. He laughed gently and said he was serious. He said he was 67 years old and tired of being alone. He said he wanted a family again. He said Lily's surgery would be fully covered. Every cent. He would move us to his home in Charlotte. Lily would have the best doctors, the best schools, the best life. I prayed about it for 3 days. I barely slept. I called my pastor. I called my best friend, Dolores. They both said the same thing. Be careful, Helen. Rich men do not rescue strangers for nothing. But when I looked at Lily lying in her bed with dark circles under her eyes and a headache that made her cry every morning, I made my decision. We got married at the courthouse in Cedar Falls. No flowers, no music, just a judge, 2 witnesses, and a quiet promise. 3 days later, Richard drove us to Charlotte in his black Mercedes. Lily sat in the back seat holding her teddy bear and looking out the window at the mountains passing by. Richard's house was enormous. A stone mansion on 5 acres of land, surrounded by oak trees and iron gates. It had 12 rooms, a pool, a library, and a kitchen bigger than my entire old apartment. Lily's eyes went wide when she saw it. "Grandma, is this a castle?" I smiled. "Something like that, baby." Richard kept his word about Lily's surgery. Within 2 weeks, she was scheduled at the best children's hospital in Atlanta. The doctors were optimistic. Richard paid for everything without blinking. He was generous, kind, attentive. He bought Lily books and art supplies. He read her bedtime stories. He held my hand during the consultations. For a moment, just a brief, fragile moment, I thought maybe God had answered my prayers, but something was not right in that house. I noticed it slowly. Small things at first. Richard had a housekeeper named Clara, who had worked for him for 8 years. Clara was polite but nervous. She avoided eye contact with me. When I asked her simple questions about the house, she gave short answers and looked over her shoulder like someone was listening. Then there was the East Wing. Richard told me it was his private office and storage. He said it was messy and embarrassing and asked me not to go in there. I respected that. Everyone deserves their space. But one night, about a month after we moved in, I woke up at 2 in the morning and Richard was not in bed. I walked down the hallway and saw a faint light under the East Wing door. I heard his voice speaking quietly, not on the phone, to someone in the room. I could not make out the words. I went back to bed and told myself it was nothing. Then Lily said something that changed everything. We were eating breakfast. Richard had left early for a meeting. Lily looked up from her cereal and said, "Grandma, why does the man in the wall watch me sleep?" My spoon stopped halfway to my mouth. "What man?" "Baby." She pointed toward her bedroom. "In the wall. There is a little eye. It blinks sometimes." My blood went cold. I told Lily to finish her cereal, and I walked to her room. I checked the walls carefully. Nothing. I checked the shelves, the curtains, the nightlight. Nothing. Then I picked up her teddy bear, the one Richard had given her the first week we arrived. I turned it over in my hands, and there, behind the stitching near the left eye, I saw it. A tiny lens, a camera. That is where this story began. That is the moment the world shifted under my feet. I did not scream. I did not cry. I sat on the edge of Lily's bed and forced myself to think. A camera inside a child's toy. In my granddaughter's bedroom. Placed there by my husband. Why? My first instinct was to rip it out and confront him. But something stopped me. A voice inside my head that sounded like my mother. Think before you act, Helen. Fear makes you stupid. Patience keeps you alive. If I confronted Richard without understanding why the camera was there, he would have an excuse ready. He would say it was a security measure. He would say he was protecting us. He would make me feel crazy. And if whatever he was doing was truly dangerous, confronting him would put Lily and me at risk. So I left the bear exactly where it was. I smiled at Lily. I made her lunch, and I started paying attention to everything. Over the next week, I watched Richard like a hawk watches a field. He was charming in public, perfect manners, perfect smile. But behind closed doors, patterns emerged. He checked his phone constantly and always tilted the screen away from me. He made calls late at night from the East Wing. He received packages that he carried inside himself and never opened in front of me. And every few days, a woman visited the house while I was supposed to be at Lily's therapy appointments. I know this because I came home early once. I saw a silver sedan parked in the driveway. Through the front window, I glimpsed a woman, mid-40s, dark hair, expensive clothes, sitting across from Richard in the living room. Papers were spread on the table between them. When I walked in, they both looked up. Richard smiled immediately. "Helen, this is Patricia, my financial advisor." Patricia stood and shook my hand. Her grip was firm. Her smile did not reach her eyes. "Lovely to meet you," she said. I said likewise, and went to the kitchen. But from the reflection in the microwave door, I watched them exchange a look. It lasted only a second. But that second told me everything I needed to know. They were hiding something. That night, after Richard fell asleep, I did something I never thought I would do. I went through his coat pockets. I found a receipt from a storage facility, 20 minutes away. Unit 14B, paid monthly. Cash. I memorized the address. The next morning, I called Dolores, my oldest friend, the one person I trusted completely. I told her everything. The camera, the East Wing, Patricia, the storage unit. Dolores was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Helen, you need to go to the police." "I know," I said. "But I need to understand what I am dealing with first. If I go to the police and say my rich husband put a camera in a teddy bear, they might shrug. I need more." Dolores paused. "Then be careful. And be fast. Do not give him time to figure out, you know." She was right. Speed mattered now. I was not going to make the mistake of waiting too long. 2 days later, while Richard was at a lunch meeting downtown, I drove to the storage facility. Unit 14B. I did not have the key, but the manager, a tired-looking man in his 50s, glanced at my driver's license showing Ashford as my last name. "You are his wife?" he asked. I nodded. He shrugged and opened the unit. What I found inside made my knees weak. Filing cabinets. Dozens of them. I opened the first drawer and pulled out a folder. Inside were documents. Legal documents, property deeds, trust agreements, insurance policies. But the names on them were not Richard Ashford. They were different names. Different identities. Robert Aldridge, Raymond Alcott, Randall Abrams. All with Richard's photograph. My hands trembled as I flipped through more folders. There were records of marriages. 3 of them. Different states. Different years. None of them were me. Each marriage was followed by financial documents showing large transfers of assets. And then, in every case, a death certificate. Wife deceased. Cause of death varied. Heart failure. Accidental fall. Medication overdose. I dropped the folder. My legs gave out and I sat on the cold concrete floor of that storage unit, staring at the evidence of what my husband truly was. Not a lonely businessman, not a kind widower. A predator. He found vulnerable women. Women with sick family members. Women drowning in debt. Women desperate enough to say yes to a stranger's proposal. He married them. He controlled them. And when he had taken what he wanted, they died. I do not know how long I sat there. 5 minutes. 10. Eventually, my hands stopped shaking enough to take photographs. I photographed every document, every page, every name. I put everything back exactly as I found it. I drove home in silence. When I walked through the front door, Lily ran up to me and hugged my legs. "Grandma, can we make cookies?" I picked her up and held her so tight she giggled and said, "You are squishing me." That afternoon, I did not call the police. Not yet. I called a lawyer first. A woman named Janet Torres, whose name I found through a domestic violence hotline. I told her what I had found. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "Mrs. Ashford, you need to get yourself and your granddaughter out of that house as soon as possible. But we also need to do this correctly so he cannot run." She connected me with a detective at the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. Detective Marcus Webb. I met him the next day at a coffee shop 15 minutes from the house while Lily was at her physical therapy session. I showed him the photographs. He studied them for a long time without speaking. Then he looked up. "How long have you been in this house?" 6 weeks, I said. He nodded slowly. "Mrs. Dawson, I need you to listen carefully. We have had a person of interest matching this pattern for several years. Different names, different states. We could never get close enough because the evidence disappeared. You may have just given us what we needed." My heart hammered. What do you need me to do? He leaned forward. We need you to go back to that house and act normal for a few more days. We need time to verify these documents and coordinate with other jurisdictions. Can you do that? I thought of Lily sleeping in that room with a camera watching her. I thought of those 3 women who never got the chance to sit in a coffee shop and ask for help. Yes, I said. I can do that. The next 4 days were the longest of my life. I cooked breakfast for Richard and smiled. I sat beside him on the couch and watched television. I let him read Lily her bedtime story, while I stood in the doorway and counted the minutes until he left the room. Every night, after he fell asleep, I lay in the dark and stared at the ceiling and reminded myself, 4 more days, 3 more days, 2 more days. On the 3rd night, something almost went wrong. Richard came home from a meeting looking agitated. He poured himself a drink and sat in the kitchen staring at his phone. Then he looked at me. Helen, have you been in my office? No, I said calmly. You asked me not to. He studied my face. His eyes were different that night, sharper, searching. Clara said she saw your car leave early this morning. I needed groceries, I said. The store opens at 7. He held my gaze for a long moment. Then he smiled. Of course. I am sorry. I have been stressed about some business matters. I smiled back. No need to apologize. But when he turned away, I saw his hand grip the glass so hard his knuckles turned white. He was suspicious. I had to move faster. I texted Detective Webb that night from the bathroom with the water running. He is getting nervous. How much longer? The reply came quickly. Tomorrow. Be ready. The next morning, Richard left for what he said was a meeting at his lawyer's office. I watched his car disappear down the driveway. Then I moved. I packed 1 bag for Lily and 1 for myself. Only essentials. Clothes, documents, Lily's medication schedule, and the physical therapy referral from her surgeon. I carried the bags to my car and put them in the trunk. Then I went back inside and retrieved the teddy bear from Lily's room. Lily was in the kitchen eating toast. Grandma, where are we going? I knelt beside her. We are going on a little trip, sweetheart. An adventure. She smiled. Can I bring my bear? Not this one, baby. We will get you a new one. A better one. She looked confused but nodded. Okay, Grandma. We drove to the address Detective Webb had given me. A police precinct on the north side of Charlotte. When we arrived, Janet Torres was already there. So was Detective Webb and 2 FBI agents. Lily sat in a room with a kind woman who gave her coloring books and juice, while I sat at a metal table and told them everything from the beginning. 3 hours later, Richard Ashford was arrested at a restaurant downtown. He was sitting across from Patricia, who turned out to be not his financial advisor but his accomplice. She handled the legal paperwork that transferred assets from his victims into accounts only they could access. If you are listening right now, let me ask you something. What would you have done in my place? Would you have stayed quiet? Would you have run? Or would you have fought back? Tell me in the comments. And make sure you subscribe, because what happened next shocked even the detectives. The investigation lasted months. Detective Webb told me later that my photographs from the storage unit were the breakthrough they had been waiting for years. Richard Ashford was not his real name. His birth name was David Allen Pritchard, originally from Mobile, Alabama. He had been running this scheme for over 12 years across 5 states, 4 marriages before me. 3 of those wives were dead. The 4th, a woman named Louise from Savannah, Georgia, had survived but suffered a severe stroke that investigators now believed was caused by poisoning. She was living in a care facility, unable to speak or care for herself. When I heard about Louise, I locked myself in the bathroom and cried until I had nothing left. That could have been me. That could have been Lily growing up alone, again, wondering why another person who was supposed to protect her had disappeared. Patricia Holt was arrested the same week. She confessed to helping Richard forge documents and create false identities in exchange for a percentage of the stolen assets. She showed no emotion during her statement. She said it was business. The trial took place 8 months later in a federal courthouse in Charlotte. I sat in the gallery every single day. Richard, or David, whatever his name was, sat at the defense table in a grey suit, looking like the polished gentleman I had met at the diner. He never looked at me. Not once. The prosecution presented the evidence methodically. The false identities, the marriage certificates, the death certificates, the financial transfers totaling over $11 million, stolen from 4 women who had trusted him. The toxicology reports that linked 2 of the deaths to a slow-acting compound found in household supplements. When it was my turn to testify, I stood at the witness stand and looked directly at him. My voice did not shake. I told the court exactly what had happened. The camera in the teddy bear, the storage unit, the documents, the night he asked if I had been in his office, and I knew I was running out of time. The defense attorney tried to discredit me. He said I was a gold digger who married a wealthy man and then fabricated evidence when the relationship soured. I looked at him calmly. I was making $7.40 an hour at a diner and sleeping 3 hours a night to pay for my granddaughter's brain surgery. I did not go looking for your client. He came looking for me. Because that is what predators do. They find people who are already hurting. The courtroom was silent. Richard was convicted on 14 federal charges, including fraud, identity theft, and 2 counts of second-degree murder. Patricia received 12 years for conspiracy and accessory charges. The judge called it one of the most calculated patterns of predatory behavior he had seen in his career. After the sentencing, Detective Webb walked me to my car. He shook my hand and said something I will never forget. "You saved lives, Mrs. Dawson. Not just yours and Lily's. You stopped him from doing this to anyone else." I thanked him. Then I drove to the hospital to pick up Lily from her follow-up appointment. Her surgery had been successful. The tumor was removed completely. Her recovery was slow but steady. She had physical therapy twice a week and checkups every month. The bills that Richard had promised to pay were covered through a victims' restitution fund established by the court. Every cent he had stolen was being traced and returned. We moved back to Tennessee, not to Cedar Falls, to a small house in Knoxville, closer to Lily's doctors. Dolores helped me find it. 2 bedrooms, a little yard, a kitchen with a window that catches the morning light. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. Really, ours. Lily started 2nd grade that fall. She made friends. She joined the art club. She still had headaches sometimes, but the doctors said they would fade. One evening she came home from school with a drawing she had made. It was a picture of 2 people standing in front of a small house with a yellow door. She had written at the bottom, in her careful, wobbly handwriting, "Me and Grandma, home." I put it on the refrigerator and stood there looking at it for a long time. 6 months after the trial, I received a letter forwarded through Janet Torres. It was from Louise's daughter in Savannah. She wrote that because of my testimony, her mother's case was reopened and reclassified. What they had called a stroke was now being investigated as poisoning. She said her mother could not speak anymore, but if she could, she would say thank you. I wrote back. I told her I was sorry I did not find the truth sooner. I told her that her mother's survival, even in silence, mattered, that she was proof he did not win every time. Sometimes at night, after Lily is asleep, I sit on the porch and look at the stars and think about those other women, the ones who did not make it. I think about how close I came to being one of them. I think about how easy it is for a desperate woman to say yes to a man who promises salvation. And I think about how dangerous it is when the world ignores the quiet ones, the grandmothers, the widows, the women nobody watches because nobody thinks they matter. We matter. If this story touched your heart, do me a favor right now. Hit that like button and leave me a comment. Tell me where you are listening from. Tell me what you would have done. And subscribe to this channel, because I believe that stories like mine need to be heard. Not for sympathy, not for pity, but because somewhere out there, right now, another woman is sitting across from a man with a perfect smile and a terrible secret. And maybe, just maybe, hearing my story will give her the courage to look a little closer. Because I am 63 years old. I make the best peach cobbler in Knoxville. I sing off key at church on Sundays. And I refuse to let a monster win. Not for me. For Lily. For Louise. For every woman who deserved better and never got it. And that is the truth.